This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Linode, high-performance cloud hosting for everyone. Visit linode.com/MacVoices and take $20 off your first server package. MacVoices is supported by LinkedIn Jobs. Find the right person for your business today with LinkedIn Jobs. Pay what you want and get $50 off your first job post at linkedin.com/MacVoices. Welcome back to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This is the second part of a conversation that Adam Engst and I had in front of the Silicon Valley Mac user group via WebEx. And in the first conversation, we discussed a little bit about Apple Silicon and what it means for the Mac, iOS, and iPadOS and iOS platforms going forward. This time, we start off with iOS 14. And I'm going to add the same caveat that I did the first time around. This was shot using WebEx, and so the frame rates are a little bit off at times. If you're listening to audio, you probably won't notice any difference. If you are watching on video, you will probably see some sync issues between picture and audio. We did the best we could to correct it, but it's just not possible to correct it every single minute to make sure everything works. So we'll just ask you to bear with it this time. So let's get back to the conversation with Adam and SVMUG. So let's start with iOS, because I want to make sure we get to as much as we can here during our allotted time. What are your reactions to the iOS announcements, and specifically the one that I think I'm most excited about next to see it in practice is app clips?
The app clips. Yeah, I mean, app clips, I have to say, I find the concept of app clips to be boring. Sorry.
Really?
I mean, I see the utility of it, and I can think of maybe 2 or 3 times in my life that I would have wanted one. You know, I was parking in Toronto, and I needed to get the Green P app, which is what they use for parking in Toronto, and then I had to fund it. You know, I actually ended up not using it because they wanted me to fund it with $25. And I was like, no way, I'm parking for an hour. I'm not going to pay you $25 to park for an hour when it's going to cost me, 98 or something. So I ended up using the meter normally. And actually, it was the same thing. I was in Atlanta once, and I wanted to try one of those scooters. I'd never tried one of the scooters, and it was the same thing where I had to download the app and set up an account, and they wanted me to fund it to $25. I was like, I want to ride the scooter once. I'm not going to spend $25 for a 10-minute ride once. And then it started to rain, so I had a good reason not to. But so yeah, those were the perfect examples of when app clips would have been ideal, because I wouldn't have had to download an app, I wouldn't have had to set up an account, and I could have used Apple Pay for my $1.25 for a 20-minute ride on the scooter, or to use to be able to use this parking app. So that's where it comes into play. Maybe I'm weird because I don't live in an urban area, and so I just don't run into situations where I need apps to do something that I'm probably never going to do again. And so maybe I'm odd. But even the car wash that I go to has started using an app instead of putting quarters in. But I'm perfectly happy to get the app because I go to the car wash a couple of times a year, and so whatever, that doesn't bother me. App clips doesn't seem like it would be a big win there because I'd have to deal with it every time in the same way. So why not have the app? So that's not one of my really big things. Here's where I have to admit I'm it's getting late and I'm starting to blank. I mean, what was the other big things that were in 14? Widgets in the home screen. Yes, I think widgets in the home screen is absolutely brilliant, and I'm really looking forward to that. I have iOS 14 running on an iPhone 7. I had to remember which one it was, and so all you get right now are the Apple widgets, which I find relatively uninteresting. But as soon as Dark Sky, oh gosh, I hope Apple keeps the Dark Sky app going. I live and die by Dark Sky and my weather, and I hope Apple doesn't screw it up. But now that they own Dark Sky, for people who hadn't noticed the announcement, but that's the kind of thing where I use Dark Sky enough that I would love to have a Dark Sky widget just sitting there showing me the weather. and I would expect it to be done well and things like that. So, I'm really curious to see how that changes things. I really like the idea of the app library at the sort of on the back of the home screen. I think it ends up basically being, because of who I am and what I do. I think I have. Oh, let me look here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think I have 10 home screens, and at least 2 of those are folders, and just full of folders. So I have a lot of apps on my iPhone because I need to look at something to see if it's worth reviewing, or someone want me to test something and whatever. So, and then I've got this thing forever. So I think App Library is going to be brilliant for just seeing a list of all the apps that I have alphabetically. And I like the fact that you can hide home screens, but I think that Apple has sort of missed the boat in a couple of ways with this feature, which is it still doesn't help you actually find the app icons wherever they may happen to be on one of your home screens. I can't find. I mean, I actually use the search, so I swipe down and type in app names. For most of my apps, I can't. If they're not on the first 2 screens, I can't find them. I literally don't know where they are, and I have no way of finding them on the home screen, so I have to search for them every time. I can use the app library, but that's not really any better, right? So unless I can use the app library to sort of rebuild a home screen or to find where they are and delete them from the home screen, I'm not sure that's going to be a big help. So I think it's a good start, but I would like to have. I think Apple still desperately needs some way of helping you build home screens that make sense. That once they took that feature out of iTunes, which it wasn't great there to begin with, but at least you had an interface where you could see multiple things at once, multiple screens at once. It just became almost impossible to organize your home screens if you have more than a couple.
Yeah, because you as soon as you download an app, it inevitably goes somewhere. And you gotta go find it, if you can find it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I guess I'm excited over the app clips idea because I find myself, well, now nobody's out and about as much as you used to be. But,
well, at home, I've got my app clip to open the shades.
Yeah. Well, but the idea that, okay, everybody has an app, right? Every restaurant chain, everybody has an app. And I don't want all of those apps on my phone. But if I walk in and there's some kind of deal that I can only take advantage of this way, I would love that. And in fact, I'd love to get rid of all those apps and just be able to use app clips and not have to download the whole thing and go through that. And then, I wake up in the morning and, gee, Chuck, you have 43 apps that need updates. I mean, after a while, that gets kind of tiresome too. So.
I have to admit, I gave up entirely on manual updates because I was like, yeah, I give up. I have 200 apps on this phone. I can't even think about what needs updating. Just do it. And I ignore it. So yeah, I mean, you're right. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that in my life, I don't tend to eat it, kind of chains that would have their own apps or things like that. So I don't think it would do much for me, but I could, particularly for more urban, is quite what it comes down to. And you're more likely to be in places where people are going to say, oh yes, I'm going to invest the money in the infrastructure necessary to have app clips pop up on people's phones when they walk in my door. So, it just doesn't do a whole lot for the kind of life I live, I guess.
Yeah. And this once again is sort of the beauty of iOS and the way things are designed, because you can this machine can be whatever you need it to be. If you're urban, if you're rural, if you're a little bit of both, it's great.
Well, and the thing that I remember being shocked by is just how different it is. We went to London 2 summers ago for a friend's wedding, and the London Tube, you can pay with Apple Pay, contactless payment, and it was just one of those things where it's like, yes, I just basically wave my phone in the general vicinity of this thing and I'm done. And what was even better is if you use the same payment each time. You couldn't switch back and forth between your phone and your watch. But as long as you had the same device for an entire day, you weren't charged until the end of the day, and then they gave you like the best possible rate. Because no one can keep track of whether or not you're in this zone or that zone, or if it's on peak fares or off peak. No one knows, and so they just gave you the best possible rate. But it was one of those situations where I was like, wow, and of course this is London, so this is millions and millions of people doing this every day. I was like, this is so different for someone like me who lives in rural / suburban / small town area. I don't. There is public transit here. I don't even know if they have an app. I've never taken the bus around here, since I've lived in Ithaca. So, there's just no need. So it was an interesting insight into what is a very common experience, but you have to live in the right place.
Agreed. So by my clock, we have just a little bit of time left. So I want to, again, open it up to questions or comments from anyone. Because Adam and I can go for a long time until we
can go until we fall asleep.
Yeah, exactly. But so, folks, anything's on anyone's mind that they'd like to question or comment on?
Yeah, I have a question. When you're talking about touchscreens on the Mac, I'm trying to picture. So I'm sitting here looking at two 27-inch monitors in front of me, which are connected to my Mac Mini, and I'm trying to imagine how this would become touch technology. Would I be willing to move to a much smaller display in order to have touch? Also, it's about arm's length away from me, and so I'd have to lean forward to touch these monitors, and I think that would create some definite physical problems in the long run.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's why when I was talking about that, I was suggesting that it would be on laptops. That I really, as I see your finger coming closer to the screen. I don't think that it does make sense for desktop Macs as we are currently accustomed to using them. Microsoft, a while ago, what was it called? Chuck, do you remember was it the Surface Pro? They had some big 27-inch a desktop PC that you worked at sort of like at a drafting table.
Yeah, it looked a lot like one of the HPs. I know which one you're thinking about.
Yeah. So, I can see that happening. It's not unthinkable, but it changes. It's such a radical change for workspaces and the way people think about this stuff that I don't see it as being likely. So, yeah, I don't really see the iMacs as being touchscreen. And similarly, if you're running a Mac Mini, you're going to hook up some random monitor most of the time. So it's not going to be touchscreen kind of by default, that it's only going to be Apple hardware. So that's why it feels to me like if Apple did it, it would be in laptops only. And frankly, it'd be a little bit like the touch bar where it could never be the only way of doing something. It would have to simply be an alternative to something you could always do via the mouse. But, in some ways, the touch bar is a good example of like where Apple did instead of a touch screen, and it really never went anywhere. That it was just, it wasn't interesting enough. But it wasn't like anything else, whereas a touch screen MacBook or MacBook Pro would be enough like an iPad, I think, that people would see the utility in it, where they never really did on the touch bar.
And to the gentleman's point, you're going to have to buy new monitors if that's the case. Your iMac, if they did it with the iMac, yeah, great, it would be built in. But if you're getting that secondary monitor, you're going to have to build one that has touch support, whatever that means.
And one thing I don't know, actually, we've never seen big touchscreens. So, I don't know if that would radically increase the price also, which seems sort of likely, or that it would basically be problematic. I've never seen a touchscreen that was 27 inches big, short of that Microsoft thing.
Well, they had the Surface tables. You remember the Surface tables?
Yeah, but those were low resolution.
Well, because right now there are also plenty of restaurants I mean, you go to Vegas and
Right.
everybody has one of those scrolling menus that you could do. But your point is well taken. The resolution on those.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking a high quality monitor. I would worry that to make it a reasonable thing that it would become radically expensive. So yeah, you're right, absolutely. I don't see touchscreen happening across the entire Mac line. Again, if only because Mac Pros and Mac Minis don't have Apple monitors. So, by default, they might. Apple could come out with a monitor that was actually affordable. Sorry, I'm a little bitter and twisted about a $6,000 monitor, but nonetheless, unless they were to do that, then it's a non-starter as becoming the only way to do something. But that's fine. I'm really okay with touch being something that you get on laptops as an extra way of doing something if you so wish.
Just ignore him, folks. He's still upset over the $100,000 Ferrari.
$6,000. I mean, come on! I have a Thunderbolt 27-inch display sitting next to this beautiful Retina Mac, and since 2014, I have been waiting for Apple to do a 27-inch Retina display that I can hook to my Mac, and so I don't have everything on the other machine that looks worse. It really looks worse when you have them sitting next side by side, and I'm like, just. Every time I look at it, I'm like, not quite as good. Not quite as good. Not.
Take your meds, Adam. MacVoices is supported by Linode. You can build it on Linode. A robust online presence is important anytime, but even more so right now. You need your website or your hosted services to be as stable and secure as possible, but you also need to have those services as responsive as possible. And that's why you need Linode. If you already have a site, take a look at how long it takes to load. If it seems slow, you should look into Linode. Their native SSD storage, 40 gigabit network, and industry-leading processors make sure that your site will load as quickly as possible. And a fast-loading site means more business. If you're looking to build a new site or deploy new services, you should look at Linode for the same reason, but also because of their 10 worldwide data centers, so that your site can be hosted where it needs to be, not where the service provider thinks it should be. And you want to be sure that your site is easy to keep up. Linode makes deployment and maintenance easy with their tools to provision, secure, monitor, and back up your server. And that's just the beginning. So right now, go find out what Linode can do for you at linode.com/MacVoices. That's Linode, linode.com/MacVoices, and take $20 off your first server package. Linode.com/MacVoices to take $20 off your first server package. Get started now and have your new server up and online in no time. Thanks to Linode for their support of MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Small businesses have unique needs. One need that doesn't change, though, even during these uncertain times, is having the right people on your team. The right people with the right skills makes all the difference. And that difference might be the health or even survival of your company. That's why you need to rely on LinkedIn Jobs to help you with your next hire. Determine the hard and soft skills you need and let LinkedIn Jobs screen the candidates for you, putting your job in front of the most qualified of their members. How many is that? Well, it depends on the job, obviously, but with over 690 million members, that's millions with an M, you're going to find the right person and you're going to find them fast. If you are in business today, you are busy. Let LinkedIn help you efficiently and quickly find your next great hire. And when your business is ready to make that hire, find the right person with LinkedIn Jobs. You can pay what you want and get the first $50 off. Just visit linkedin.com/MacVoices. Again, that's linkedin.com/MacVoices to get $50 off your first job post. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks to LinkedIn Jobs for their support of MacVoices. Other questions or comments, folks?
Yeah, I got a question. If you go to like Google or Facebook, you'll see a mixture of developers running around campus with Macs or PC laptops and such. But with the transition to a RISC processor, we're going to lose the unfortunate PC on a Mac option. Do you see that hurting?
So yeah, virtualization is the big thing that we lose, and because you used to be able to just run Parallels or VMware Fusion or VirtualBox, and poof, you'd have a PC. And not just a PC. Well, you'd have a PC which could run Windows or Linux or Chrome OS or anything else, and that was great. And that's just going to be gone. That's not to say that we won't have some sort of emulation environment. So, I mean, we're all old enough to remember the days before Intel when we used to have Virtual PC. Sorry, I had a brief neuron moment of firing of like, what was the name of it? So yes, we'll be able to emulate that stuff, and we might have enough performance that it's worthwhile to do so. And you're not taking a huge hit if you just need to run that custom app. What you probably won't get is decent performance if you want to do gaming or machine learning or something like that where you really need to go to the hardware in a big way. There are as I said, Linux for ARM, there is Windows for ARM, so it's entirely possible that we will have Parallels Desktop or VMware Fusion that will let us access other RISC-based operating systems, which will run some but not all of the Intel-based software that we're used to because they're designed to do that. So it's a good question, and I don't know. I don't think we'll really know the answer until the machines come out and until the people at Parallels and VMware and the open source VirtualBox kind of people get their hands on it and see what's possible. I'm almost certain that people will do something. If nothing else, programmers love to virtualize stuff. They love to do that kind of, let's see if I can run this operating system on this other chip that is totally not designed for and still make it useful. So it'll happen, but we won't know until it comes out what's going on and what the trade-offs are. I mean, like Virtual PC was a brilliant thing in its time, but it did have some performance issues. So it was great if you needed that custom accounting package for your dentist office or something like that. But no one played games in it.
But also, I feel obligated to point out that we've just been given a minimum 2 years notice that this transition is going to happen. So you've got the programmers have 2 years to figure it out. You have 2 years to figure it out if you are using something that is custom. And frankly, you probably have longer because when the vast non-Apple Silicon Mac rolls off the line, you're still going to have years of support for the existing line.
Apple didn't give a specific number for that. I mean, they said, we're trying to have the whole transition within 2 years, but they did say that they would be supporting, Intel chips with Mac OS for many years to come, I believe was the quote. So I would read that into the 4 or 5 more after they stop making them. And you can kind of see that, we lost Rosetta in Lion. In 10.7. So Apple will at some point ditch Rosetta 2, which is what they're coming up with to be able to run Intel-based software on the Apple Silicon Macs. So, but it's going to be quite a while. And there's always that simple fact of you can keep using old hardware in the way that it was meant to be used when it was new for quite a while afterwards. It's a little bit harder nowadays due to security and cloud-based stuff. Used to be you could just run old stuff forever because it didn't have to connect to anything. Nowadays, if you don't have a current web browser, after a certain number of years, you lose security certificates and stuff like that, so they become non-functional in other ways. But I really don't see this as being a huge issue, probably for that, call it 6 to 8 years from now. By the time Apple gets everything out, makes the switch, and then finally sunsets the old Macs.
Right. Adam, last thing, because we're pretty much out of time, but I wanted to ask, was Virtual WWDC a success?
From what I hear, absolutely. and that my understanding is for the developers, actually, they actually preferred the recorded presentations. And part of it was, you could always go, even real WWDC, you could always go back and watch them later. But by not having it be live, they didn't have to be a specific amount of time. You could sort of have this random schedule. If you only need 17 minutes to have your presentation, you don't have to have a 30-minute block. And you're not taking questions and things like that. So, they changed up the way you think about it in terms of watching something that's pre-recorded and then going and asking questions later. Obviously, the keynote was recorded, which I must say just about killed us in taking notes, because they go fast enough as it is, and when they're recording it, I swear they speeded the whole thing up by like 5%. It was just enough so that you couldn't, it didn't sound funny. They didn't sound like chipmunks, but they were talking really fast, and because it was then scripted, there were just no ancillary words, so you didn't get to breathe when you were taking notes. But I think, obviously the people who get to go to WWDC, which is a very small number of people, you have to remember this, that it's, 5,000 or 6,000, but compared to the number of people who want to go, it's a very small number. And so in many ways, this is actually much more, there's a lot more equity there. Everyone was treated the same. Some people didn't get lucky and get to go to WWDC and thus sort of get this advantage over all the other developers who couldn't not even afford to go, but just weren't able to go because it's a lottery system. So, yeah, it's a good question what Apple will do in the future, but I wouldn't be surprised if they kept it virtual. Maybe they do the keynote live, just as they would do their normal kind of keynote things, and invite media. But I on the whole, from what I have heard from developers, is they were pretty happy with it. So as long as Apple maintains the interactivity side of it, so you can actually go talk to someone. I know developers who have literally had like the bug they've been beating themselves over the head with for months, and they win the lottery, get to go to WWDC, and they track down the one guy who they need to talk to and like pin him down for 45 minutes. And usually, and in the stories, it works out. He's like, okay, I see what you're saying. I understand the code. I wrote the code. I am fixing it in the next release. Sometimes you need that kind of interactivity, and so hopefully that doesn't go away. But apart from that, having a really nice, well done presentation. Although there is the I don't want to say conspiracy thing, but everyone was always like, why do they have certain things on their desks? They've got this beautiful, smooth, clean environment, and like the one thing on their desk. So people like trying to read into the tea leaves of why does he have a Transformers robot on his desk, and why does he have a Newton, and so who knows?
I think there's a whole department at Apple that is just tasked with driving us all crazy with those kind of things.
I blame Serenity's Coldwell.
Yeah. Thank you. Hi, Serenity. Adam, according to Mike Falk, we're out of time. So thank you for being here and doing this. And, of course, thanks to the Silicon Valley Mac User Group for having us.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it. And I want to say one thing to the group and to the leadership. I congratulate you, because you guys are keeping your group going through these tough times with these virtual meetings. I know it's not the same, and I see too many groups that have just suspended meetings and aren't even trying. You guys are trying, and you're doing it. And so, good job. Keep it up.
Indeed. From my perspective, it's also just great to be able to come and do these things. Obviously, no one's traveling now, but, it's hard enough even when times are normal. And so to be able to do this, and, it's, I guess it's not the same for you not being in the same room, but it is, it's not that much different for me. And I really, Chuck and I enjoyed being able to talk like this and have more of a live audience and take some questions and things like that. Besides, it gets him off the hook when I sometimes have fun with him otherwise.
Yeah. Adam likes to abuse me. So, folks, Yes, this is Mac Voices. I'm Chuck Joyner. That's Adam Engst. That's the Silicon Valley Mac User Group. Thank you so much for having us. We'll see you next time. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.